Felicitations, malefactors! Welcome back to Random Pick. I am your host, Sam Bradley, and this week's guest is Tiffany Gordon. Thanks for coming on the show, Tiffany.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Yeah, so this week we're going to talk about photography. So, Tiffany, why don't you start by telling us about your background in photography and maybe how you got started in it?
Okay. So, hi all. My name is Tiffany. I am a photographer. Currently I'm working in e-commerce where I help with our digital marketing, so I take photos for promotions and stuff like that. But I got a degree in photography at a school called Webster University in St. Louis, about 4 years ago now, a little bit over 4 years ago now. And so I work mainly in e-commerce right now, but I also do photography on the side. I really like taking photos of mainly anything outdoors, architecture. I do a little bit of people. It's not always my favorite, but just doing a lot of outdoor stuff. How did I get started in photography? About in 2008. Sounds like forever ago. I was borrowing my mom's camera. We were at, like, my uncle's house, and I was, like, just taking photos of, like, flowers and stuff, and she just, like, really encouraged me and being like, "Oh, maybe you should do photography, be a photographer," and stuff like that. So that is how I got into photography and deciding that I wanted to do that with my life.
Awesome. That's cool. So, I guess you touched on it a little bit. So, you have you said like nature photography is like something you enjoy. So, is that like your I guess like the specific genre or style that you really like cling to that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, I probably enjoy it the most. One of my favorite things about doing like anything in nature, photography wise, is I'll go out and I'll just have like my headphones in and listening to music and just it's like just me and my camera outside and taking photos. Um, I now the weather's been so wacky recently, as you know, Sam. But like now
Hmm.
that it's kind of being not rainy anymore, I'm like in summer and I'm looking forward to getting outside more because in the spring you kind of there's not a lot of stuff to take photos of. I feel like sometimes other than like flowers and stuff, but all the trees don't have leaves yet, so as they're getting the leaves, like I was photographing that. But in winter when we had like a big ice storm, that was I went outside for like in like 10-degree weather, like with my thick coat on, thick boots, and like walking around taking photos of like the most cool ice um things that were frozen, all the snow, all that stuff. And it was just so enjoyable and nobody was bothering me. So just it's fun to do outdoors and nature photography.
Nice. It's excellent. Do you mostly do digital photography or have you worked with film as well?
I mostly do digital. I do have a film camera. I have not busted that out in a while. Mainly just because I don't have any darkroom stuff to do right now. Like I can send it away, but I would prefer to develop the film myself. I took
Hmm.
2 classes in, college that was film photography, and I actually took one in high school too, when I was really kind of first introduced to film. But, I do like film photography and I always shot black and white for film. I never did color,
Hmm.
but, like, also just doing digital, there's so much I like to put in black and white, but I do kinda miss film every once in a while and just the process of doing all that.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's a really neat process. I've only done it like once, I think, um, through when I took a photography class at
Yeah.
Heartland. But
Oh,
that was
fun.
pretty neat.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I'm sure a lot of people who are into photography want to know Canon or Nikon.
I have a Nikon. I feel like more people say Canon than Nikon, but I started off with a Nikon, like D3200, and I have a D7100 right now. But it was just like when I
Hmm.
was buying my new camera, I was just like, oh, I already have this, like
Hmm.
lenses and stuff. So I'm like, what's the point of switching all the way to Canon, kind of a thing. So,
Sure. Yeah. No, I think I still have 3200.
Mhm.
But the focus ring in the lens broke, so I can't adjust the focus anymore. So everything's all in one depth of field. So I
Yeah.
basically am stuck to the point where if I want to get back into it, I just have to buy a new lens, which is expensive.
Was that, like,
But
the lens that came with the camera? Because I'm pretty
yep,
sure that lens
yep.
for me also is kind of screwed up.
Yeah, because the way the lenses, it's like a lot. It's like two rotating cylinders, and I
Yeah.
think something in whatever the track is that they rotate on, something happened where it's just got slightly off the track.
Uh-huh.
Because if you look at it, the lens is like it kind of like sags down a little bit, and it's not like perfectly straight. So it's like something happened, but so that's unfortunate. But again,
Yeah,
if I have the body, I could just replace the lens,
get a new
and those,
lens.
yeah. But anyways, so I guess an interesting thing,
Okay.
that one thing that I've noticed, since I've taken photography classes and gotten into like that kind of like cinematography thing is, as a
Mhm.
photographer, when you watch movies, do you notice like the way shots are framed and stuff like that more than like, I don't know, before you really got into photography?
Yeah, it's it's kind of crazy, and I kinda think back of just, like, even, like, in photography classes and stuff when we're, like, talking about each other's work, and, like, my professor pointed out something to me, his name's Bill, and Bill one time was just like, "Tiffany, like, a lot of your photography has, like, patterns in it." So now, like, when I'm, like, some
Mm.
type of pattern, like, I had never realized this before, and even now when I'm, like, looking at, like, some of my photos and stuff, I'm like, "Is there a pattern in this?" So it's like, even
Mhm.
watching shows and stuff, and I'll be like, "You wouldn't take a photo like that." I'm more like being like, "That's not the best angle," or even just letting my friends take a photo of, like, if we're doing, like, a group photo or something, I'm just like, "Ooh, that's, like." I feel bad, but, like, I also, along with photography, I took, like, a gallery management class, and I
Mm.
loved it. It's something I really enjoy, so I know how to hang photos professionally, but I'll be
Mhm.
at people's places, and I'll be like, "Ooh, that's not hung correctly."
Oh, funny.
I don't tell them that though, but
Mhm. That's interesting. So obviously, you said,
yeah.
you kind of handle photography and stuff for your work. So what specifically, I guess, is that you do, or is there like, do you have like clients that you take pictures for, or is it mostly just like the company itself?
It it's company itself, so our last, like, big photo shoot that we did was actually, I think, at the beginning of February, and we're doing one soon with, like, the upcoming Olympics. So I work at a
Hmm.
swimwear company, so, for our Olympic stuff, we're getting, more, like, red, white, and blue, we have, like, different color tubes for, like, rescue tubes and getting, like, the gold, silver ones, like, doing photos like that. Our shoot back in, February, we were doing a lot of, like, "Hey, let's get a lot of, like, group photos together of products for teams,
Mm.
so we can market it that way." So, me and our marketing person, she's also super creative, so it was really awesome to have, like, her around to bounce off ideas with of being like, how can we put these photos together for when we're sending out emails of being like, hey, this is on sale this week, or for our Instagram, stuff like that. So, at work, yeah, I take photos of that. So sometimes then I edit them. Sometimes our marketing person edits them. We just always have a lot going on. So it's like always sometimes like all hands on deck for like the actual photos, but like I'm the one like actually taking the photos and all that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I have a fun question. So if you were, say, if you were hired by like a travel agency,
Ooh.
and they were to send you to, um like, any country to like go take pictures for like, a promotional pamphlet or something, what country would you want to go to?
There's possibly two. Um,
Okay.
one of them, my first thought was Greece. I've always
Hmm.
wanted to go to Greece, and I think that would just be really cool and really fun to photograph, especially like different ruins, like blue waters, all that fun stuff. I just always wanted to go to Greece, and I was disappointed that I was actually not able to go there when I studied abroad in Europe. So I was there for 4 months, and I just didn't go to Greece just because it was kind of more expensive than traveling anywhere else. But I wouldn't mind going back to Switzerland. That's where I lived for 4 months. So going back there, the mountains were always beautiful, and just traveling like the countryside in Switzerland because yeah, I lived in Geneva, so I lived in a city. It was awesome. It was great. Still saw the mountains from like my room and all that stuff, but like actually traveling more in the countryside and like just hopping off the train somewhere and taking photographs just sounds amazing.
Okay. That's cool. That would be super fun. Yes. So for someone who may be just like getting into photography or like has like thought about it but didn't really know what like basic like maybe somebody who's they've maybe taken a class or two and they're like, oh, they've thought about maybe trying to do it professionally. What would be some tips you would have for someone like that trying to get into that field, I suppose?
Um, I think definitely one of the tips that sometimes I wish like I knew and sometimes I have to remind myself, especially when editing photos, is that you don't always have to keep on editing it. If this probably sounds so weird.
Mm. Mhm.
Because I know I've probably spent an hour just editing one photo before. I know I've done it. So it's just like sometimes it's like it is fine the way it is. Or like
Mhm.
do the little bits that and pieces that you want, but you don't have to spend hours on it because in that time you're probably overworking yourself. And also, especially like if someone's going into photography, you're going to be learning as you go. And I look back of, like I have even in my apartment here, it's just, like, I have a photograph that's completely edited differently than when I edited, like, 3 years prior to the one I have now. And, like, the one I have now is, like, so much better than it was, like, when
Mm.
I was first learning how to edit photos, so it's just, I think, a lot of patience if you're in school for it, just be willing to take criticism, I always say like, "Oh, like, I take criticism easily," just because, like, we would sit there in class and have our artwork critiqued. So it's just like, be willing to listen to what people might say, "Hey, you need to work on this." I remember a story our professor told us of just saying, a student once pointed out to, like, a guest speaker being like, "Oh, why do you always edit your photos kind of darker?" And he never realized that. So there could be stuff in your
Oh, okay.
photography or in your videography or anything else in life, even writing, etc. Especially, I feel like in any type of arts field, that you might not realize what you're doing. And then for
Mm.
them to if someone points that out, being like, "Hey, like, do you notice you do this? Like, it might be better this way." Like, yeah, you can try it their way, even though if you might disagree with it, but you might also find a new way you like of editing or a new, like, just perspective on it. So just be open
Mhm.
to, I feel like, stuff that's thrown your way.
Yeah, I would say yeah, being able to take criticism gracefully and be like, okay, I even if it's something you know you've really poured your heart and soul into, being
Yeah.
like, okay, I might have because I think you when you create something like that, any form of art, I guess, but even like,
Mhm.
photography or video or, a painting, like you're biased to it because you made it
Yeah.
regardless of if you think it is like amazing or just total garbage, like both ways.
Yeah.
um, and having that outside another person come and look at it and be like, "Hey, I liked this, but I didn't like this," or uh, like kind of what you said, like somebody they look at like an entire portfolio and then they're like, "Oh, I noticed in all of your pieces there's this kind of element to it." And you're just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I like didn't realize that." That's like I subconsciously did that in my work or something.
Mhm. Yeah, and I
Um
feel like oh, sorry, Sam.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna just say, like, I like to write, like, I'm never going to publish anything or anything, but I just like to write scenes or, like, stories and stuff like that. But even then, I'll talk to my best friend about it. I'm just like and I'll read back, and sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, this sounds horrible," but I'll read back, I'm like, "Oh, hey, this sounds fine," and then if she reads it and she'd be like, "Oh, do you realize that you use, like, this phrase a lot, or do this a lot?" And I'd be like, "No." So
Hmm. Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, or the same like plot points or plot elements
yeah,
of things like that. I've noticed when a lot of the times when I come up with campaign ideas for like Dungeons and Dragons, I like
yeah,
write my own campaigns and stuff that I run.
yeah,
I generally I've noticed that I almost always have some sort of big twist that involves the villain of the thing, and like the last couple I've written I'm like I feel like if somebody plays in this my like more than one of my campaigns, they're going to expect that from now,
yeah.
sort of a thing. And it's like that's an interesting thing that I haven't realized. So maybe I just really like that element in a story of having like, oh, there's some big twist with the villain, and I don't know.
I awe factor, you just need to, like, start out, like, first round of your campaign with the villain just, like, destroying everything and go from there.
That would be
Nobody
great.
will expect
But
it.
mhm. Yeah, but for to go off on a small tangent, basically what it was is the the players they met this guy and he was like, "Hey, I know how to do this. We can perform this ritual to, reverse all of the bad stuff that this evil guy did a while ago." And it's like,
Yeah.
"Okay." So they do that, they help the guy, they get to the end of the campaign and it's like, "Oh, plot twist, the guy you were helping was the bad guy the whole time."
That
And I think
that,
I've done
like
that twice.
that happened to me not in a D&D game, I've never played D&D, but, like, just, like, some zombie game we were playing, and it was, like, 3 AM, and we're on the last round, and someone's just like, "You're the traitor." I was so pissed, and it was, like, finals
Oh,
week 2.
Dead of Winter.
Yeah! No, but did I tell you the story before? Because
Yes,
that's what it
yes.
was,
Hmm. That game is
friends
frustrating.
yeah. I was gonna say friends that are listening, me and Sam have known each other for I think we decided about 15 years now. I would say
Yeah.
actually friends since 2014 when we, like, worked at a camp, when you became not just my brother's, like, friend, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yes. Exactly. Quite.
7 years of
Okay.
friendship.
Yes. Well. So we're gonna start to wrap up here. I'm gonna
Okay.
ask a question I've asked the last two podcasts because I think it's an interesting question to think about, and I want to try to end these with questions that aren't necessarily related to the topic, just to get
Okay.
some things. But so if you woke up tomorrow and it was 10 years prior to today, so 5/31/2011, uh,
Okay.
and you woke up and you were like, yourself in 2011, but you had retained all of the knowledge and memories up to this point. So like you knew what was going to happen the next 10
Ooh.
years. Are there things in your life that you would change, or would you try to do the same sort of stuff like leading up to now?
Oh. So, I would be a sophomore in high school. Um, you have just graduated high school then too.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I wanna say, like, "Oh, I would change some things." Like, I know but here's the thing, it's just, like, I would wanna change things, but then I wouldn't be who I am today. So,
Mhm.
like,
That's
I
that's
mean, you
the
could
thing.
yeah, you could do a Back to the Future and bet on games and become a millionaire, stuff like that.
Sure.
2016 World Series Cubs win, got it.
Go
But
back in time and invest in GameStop stocks.
yeah, maybe a little bit of cryptocurrency before it goes like crazy.
Mhm.
um, like I'm trying to think of like actual things I would change. I think there are a few things of just college stuff of just being like, and I've talked about this, like, just okay, Christianity testimony kind of thing. It's just like when I was in college, like I didn't really go to church, stuff like that. So I don't know if I would kind of want to change that part of me, but it's like also at
Mm,
that time, it's just like that wouldn't give me the fire I have today when I wasn't really like paying, like going to church and stuff like that. Like I don't know if I would be a
sure.
youth leader or at our church and stuff like that right now if that was like the story. But
Mhm.
I think in Europe a little bit, I would wish I did travel a lot, but I wish I almost I don't know, made a little bit more connections. I traveled a lot solo just because that's how my schedule ended up and I was very
Mhm.
like I had a lot of emotions at the time that weren't all healthy, but just finding a better balance then, I feel like there was a third thing that thought of oh, no, this is just my thing of a few years ago, back in probably 2017, I had graduated from college, and I was actually at this party with a bunch of my friends from school, and we were sitting there and I was sitting outside with somebody and I had just mentioned that like, "Hey, I almost, like, regret this." Like, it was regret dating someone, so if he ever listens to this, sorry, but, I was just like, "I almost kinda, like, regret this," and this guy looks at me and he's like, "Well, did you learn anything from it?" And I said, "Yes," and then he goes, "Well, then you shouldn't regret it." And so
Hmm.
that's kind of how I take a lot of things in life of like, yeah, I might not be happy with what I did, but I shouldn't regret it because I learned things from it. And I learned like for the future, like in this case, like future relationships, what I want from that then versus what I had with this guy. Or like
Sure.
I might regret, not going to church in college, but now, like, I've learned from that, and I'm, like, invested in my church now and in my youth group, all that stuff. So it's just, like, I feel like that kinda just changed my perspective on a few things of being like, "Yeah, I
Mhm.
could sit and regret everything in life, or I can make changes and not have that regret." So that's kind of like my whole thought. I feel like I took your question and went, like, tangent
No,
Tiffany
that's
on it,
great.
but it's just
No, that's great. I think that's a very
yeah,
wise outlook on life.
yeah. So, yeah, I don't think there's not really that much to change. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that is a pretty solid answer, I would say. So, is do you have a like an online portfolio or something that if people want to see your work, they could, reach out to you? I can put a link in like the description or something.
Oh,
Or do you have like an Instagram, stuff like that?
I do have an Instagram and I do have a website that is currently, I would say, under maintenance because I just need to update some stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so my website and my Instagram is the same. It's Tifflin Photography. So it's TIFFLYNN photography. So if you type tifflinphotography.com, should pop up. Again, it's under maintenance, so it might not pop up right now. But then my Instagram, it's the same handle, and that's where I mainly post just because it's easy. I have some of my winter photos that I did back in January up right now and things like that.
Okay, cool. Well, I will put those links down in the description for those listening to this on YouTube. So once again, thank you for so much for coming on the show, Tiffany.
Thanks for having me, Sam. It was fun. Yeah.
For those of you listening at home, thank you for tuning in. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, leave a comment and a like. Subscribe if you are so inclined and want to see more or hear more of these podcasts. If you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to hear on the show, put them in the comments and I will try to accommodate by finding people who are knowledgeable on said topics. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on Random Pick.